So we're going to talk, previous talk was about customers and prospects and leads and all that kind of stuff and how they're related to each other and, why you need to think of them differently and that kind of thing. And now we're going to talk about associating personas. And this is a case where we're going to try and figure out if customers are people that we're highly confident if multiple of them are really the same one, or if in some cases we have what the equivalent would be of a contact where we have very little information and we have other pool of people that we have a lot of information about. Is there some way we can know whether those are the same person? And are we going to do that at a legal level or just good level for, marketing or early data capture purposes? So I'm going to hone in on one here because I actually got in a discussion with this somebody the other day. And they said, we're going to make everybody have an account and then we'll know who they are. And I was like, no, that's not really, it's going to give us a pretty high percentage, but it doesn't work out that way. And it turns out you got people like me. I got 2 accounts at least 3 different places. Matter of fact, the most important companies I deal with, I always have more than 1 account. My main account, and then one I use like for tracking marketing. And so in this case, these 2 people, this person's got 2 different accounts. And in this case, you can see the version of this person on the left, we've got like 6 different kinds of events. We're going to treat those little boxes as events. And the one on the right, I've only done 3 things with. And somehow what we'd really like to know about this person is we did 9 different events with them. The inverse of this is also true that causes problems. And the question, and this is actually a little harder. If you're going to rely on an account as your hub, people share accounts. And we do it all the time. My insurance company, I do it. And also for most of my big tech companies, shopping and all those kinds of things. We share an account because the companies actually set it up in a way we'd be foolish not to. We get better access to resources if we're shared, right? So in this case, having an account is awesome and you might be able to know who the person is, but it is not enough to be completely confident. And also there's these other situations where the account doesn't help you, right? So, when we look at people, and so the one on the left is we're going to treat as a customer, right? And the one on the right is going to be a prospect or some kind of contact. There are going to be cases where we know, customers come to us a couple of times and we know a little bit about them. And there'll be other cases where, we might have a prospect or a marketing contact, and we may know a whole bunch about them because they surf our site, but they never give us enough information to know exactly who they are. Right. But we know a lot about their preferences. If they came back, we would actually be able to give them a better experience maybe than the actual customer. So in this case, but what is the real purpose of this slide? So talk about what do we know about a person? The main 2 things we know about them are the properties attached to that person, right? So the number of items and their activity history. And so the question is, do we know enough about the properties and attributes attached to that person to know that these 2 people on the screen are the same one, or could we use the activity history? And again, when we're trying to know whether it's the same or a different person, there's sort of the legal version. I don't want to get sued if we mess this up. If I ship, legal documents to the wrong person because we decided these 2 were the same, that's bad. But if I were to ship an offer for a 20% off coupon to the same to 2 people, or to this person that you should have got, that's not that big a deal. Right? Like nobody's going to go to court over the 20% off coupon. Well, I guess this year they might, but usually that wouldn't happen. All right. So the question is, what are we going to do? We're going to try and do persona matches, right? I'm going to treat all these as personas. So in this one in blue, right, on the left-hand side, we've got 3 people. 2 of them we think are the same customer. And the reason is we know enough about them through transactions that we're pretty confident, highly confident enough to share legal documents. That's always my... and so we're pretty sure they're the same one, right? And then, actually document signing is a good example maybe. But the 2 across the bottom, right? The customer and a prospect, they may be really similar. Like we get enough information that we're pretty sure they're the same person, right? But it may not be a legal version. So when we do this persona match, we have to decide which match level we're going for. Are we trying to say that they are exactly the same person and that if we had our choice, we would treat them as one? Or are we saying we're really confident that they're that, and if we took their aggregated attributes, we'd be willing to take some action? So they could be different or they could be the same person. It kind of depends on the use case. The two at the bottom, I would never think they're the same legal documents, but I might think they're the same for when they come back telling them, picking up where they left off in a shopping experience. I'm going to use shopping because everybody knows about it, but there's a lot of other situations where we do this. All right. And then we have, so like in the previous one, we've got this notion of people, right? So I got these two people in the bottom left, and I think they're the same. This is like Joe here with his two accounts, right? And so the question is, should the company create, and this is part of the whole customer 360 thing, you want a global identifier. Am I going to create a global identifier, right? And so maybe I want that because then I know everything I've done with that person. So I'm not saying that all the systems have to change. Each system might still have its own originating identifier, right? I buy stuff at Amazon, and they bought, what was that shoe company? Anyway, they bought a shoe company, and I had an account there too, right? And in the beginning, I got two originating identifiers, and then as we get down into this, they may want to give me a global identifier and assume that those two people are the same because their address and their credit cards are the same, and it's good enough, right? And so eventually, they might phase out one of my originating identifiers and put me on one, but in the meantime, they've got their global identifier. Now, from a marketing point of view, that may not be good enough for a global identifier, or we may do a global identifier at some level of confidence, right? The two in blue are 100% confident. The two on the bottom, right? On the bottom right, we're pretty confident, but for a lot of situations, we're just going to give that new person, the marketing person, its own global identifier. It'll end up with an originating identifier and a global identifier. And later on, we may use that to merge something in. So everybody gets an originating identifier in the system we're in, and then they get a global identifier that will change over time as we either learn more about them or more versions of them come. It could be there are 4 copies of a person because we bought 4 different companies. And we merged 2 and we merged these other 2, and they both got global identifiers for the pairs. And now we've got 4 of them, and we want to get a single global identifier. So you just got to decide, what's your level of confidence and requirement for this, and what's your risk appetite for risk. So in this case, we're talking about what I was mentioning before. We're pretty confident now that this marketing person on the right-hand side is the same one. We're going to give them the same global identifier, and we're going to treat them as a real match and not just a lead match. So the bubble was kind of a lead match before because it was a different color here, and we think those are the same people. So we're going to draw, attributes of the customer into that lead. But in this case, we've decided they're actually the same person, and we have a little bit of appetite for risk on this to treat them as the same one. Now, we might break that off later and decide that was a mistake, right? But the goal here is retain originating identifiers so you know who they are, and then figure out some way to link those together. And the simplest thing to keep track of that is the global identifier and the history global identifiers. Another thing that can happen is, so this is the same 3 people, and it may turn out that the 2 people on the left we realized were not the same person. This happens all the time. Father and son, mother, daughter, they live in the same place, they got the same names, or the clan lives in the same apartment building, and they had a global identifier, and we had this originating identifier and all these, and we had a single global identifier for these 2 people, customers that we had in one lead, and now we're looking at it, we're like, well, you know what? These 2 people aren't the same. So in this case, we're actually going to need to split those 2 people up and split their global identifier. And so this is something that people need to do, right? And we're probably going to need to manage those global identifiers. We may expire them and create new ones. What we don't want to have happen is some remote system kept the global identifier, and that global identifier now has been split. Then what are we going to do, right? So it's just something you got to think about. Maybe the system will come back with its originating identifier and go, hey, give me my global, and then give me all the people tied to this. So you got to watch the behavior of this and how you're going to, state is going to be stored in all the remote locations, because your notion of what a person is and what they aren't could actually change. Who they are and who they're not could change. So I guess the whole point of this is you got to quantify. What do you mean when you think you know who somebody is? You're going to model the different use cases. Is this a legal match? Is it a legal identity? Is it a contractual identity? Is it a marketing identity? Is it a tax identity? And so think about the different kinds of people you have and how, if you want to bundle them together, Do you want to provide that unified experience or make sure that you're not missing something? What are the different aspects of that? And I really don't have any more time. I hope this was useful. Have a great day.